Very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, basis, whichever the time zone that you are joining from. A very warm welcome from both Locus as well as Bukalapak on this very interesting webinar that we are having today, which is focused on winning the next wave of e-commerce shoppers. I'm joined by very talented Park Helbert Koto from Bukalapak. And so let me start off with a very brief introduction about myself as well as Park Helbert. So my name is Malay Shah. I'm a Senior Vice President with Locus, responsible for India, Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia as a region. So I spent significant amount of time in Southeast Asia, working across number of cities, whether it's Jakarta, Manila, Bangkok, Ho Chi Minh City, Kuala Lumpur, so on and so forth. And what we are going to do today is, obviously, I'm going to share some of my experiences, but more than that, we have immense amount of knowledge and experience that Bukalapak brings, to the table over here. So Park Helbert heads the supply chain at Mitra Bukalapak. And just to give an additional introduction, Park Helbert has been at Bukalapak for more than 4 years. He has been previously at Nestle in leading variety of logistics, supply chain, and roles associated in the broader online to offline space. Park Helbert is also a certified supply chain management professional. He's also a certified professional in logistics management from ISCA USA. So I'll not maybe steal more thunder, from Park Helbert's introduction. So I'll hand over to Park Helbert to do an additional brief introduction about himself, as well as maybe touch upon a little bit about Bukalapak. We probably all know about Bukalapak and Bukalapak Mitra, but let's also request, I'll request Albert to also introduce himself and give a little more insights into Bukalapak and Bukalapak Mitra as well before we go into the rest of the webinar.
Okay, thank you so much, Malay. Thank you so much, Locus, for having me. Good day, everyone. I think this quite been some times that Bukalapak and Locus been collaborated from, I think from the very beginning, my first year in Bukalapak. I think Malay has been mentioned a lot about me, and this is actually my 8 years in supply chain world, and still a long way to go. Many kind of challenges ahead that we are currently facing, and hopefully more challenges to be obtained in the future. Thank you, Malay.
Thank you so much, Park Helbert. I will quickly touch upon our agenda, for the rest of this webinar. As we all described in the title, we want to talk about what are the broad e-commerce trends, more specifically in Southeast Asia. And obviously, the largest region in Southeast Asia is Indonesia, so we'll obviously deep dive more in terms of what's happening in Indonesia as well. Against that backdrop, what we also would have a very interesting conversation again in terms of talking about the opportunities, at the same time the challenges that we are witnessing in the market, and then what are we trying to do to solve those problems, both as an organization as well as as a community, in terms of really helping steer the growth for e-commerce in the region. So that's the broad structure of the platform, of this webinar. We will also take a few minutes towards the end if there are questions that anyone wants to ask. I'm assuming you should be able to type in any questions in the chat window, and we will ask the moderators to basically direct those questions either to Park Helbert or to myself, and we'll be happy to answer as many questions as possible, time permitting. So without further ado, let me jump directly into the main content in terms of what are the trends that we are seeing specifically in Southeast Asia when it comes to e-commerce. So let me start out with very interesting set of statistics. What we have seen obviously over the last 5 to 6 years is tremendous amount of growth. Today, if you were to look at ASEAN as a region, we are having more than 222 million e-commerce users in this entire region. I mean, that's an enormous amount of feat which has been achieved over the last 5 to 6 years. We have seen, industries after industries getting transformed and change, because of this particular trend. But what's even more exciting is the growth ahead. Globally, we are all talking about, the challenges associated with slowdown in inflation. It really doesn't seem like this region is slowing down at all. We are expecting that, by 2025, which is, not very far away from, right now, we are talking about, the next 3 to 4 years, we will be having more than 411 million users, which will drive, close to roughly 85% growth rate, from where we are to, where we'll get to within a very short span of, of about 3 to 4 years. And also, what's also interesting, what you see on the right hand side, is that, especially it's not just about the number of users, but what's also more important is the volume of business that will, keep on expanding and growing in the region as well. So that is expected to grow up to, $38.2 billion in terms of the revenues. Let me talk about very briefly, and here is where I will like Park Albert to share his views in terms of what he's seeing in particular from Bukalapak. Indonesia in particular, we have more than 270 million users in Indonesia. The interesting fact is more than 50% of that population, today shop online. I mean, which is a great consumer base, and it's great to have that consumer base, which is growing both in terms of the size and the scale. And they spend, more than they are expected to spend more than $9 billion, in 2022. And this is against the backdrop of, just 6 years back, we were probably just only 1/5 of that particular number. So that growth has continued. I mean, has become 5x, and it is all reflected in a massive amount of success that Bukalapak, for example, had when it went public. And this growth is expected to continue, till 2026, where this is expected to, close to double from where we are right now. So I just wanted to give this statistics. This all comes from, from Accenture's study, which they have done, and which is out there in the public domain as well. But very interesting set of statistics. Also, this is something which, analyst after analyst have been reconfirming. So the backdrop looks very, very interesting in terms of a large consuming population, which is mobile first, which is cloud first, which is consuming, and basically contributing to this particular growth. But let me ask, I'll maybe take a pause here. Maybe I'll get Albert's views here as well, in terms of what, are you seeing a similar set of trend from Bukalapak's perspective, just from a growth and from a consumption perspective, and any specific trends that you would want to share over here, before we kind of move on to the next set of slides.
Okay, thank you, Malay. I think it's super aligned with what's currently happening, especially in Indonesia as part of the CEA country. When we see in terms of number of internet penetration, the technology right now is becoming more democratized, not only for the middle high, but also for many kind of segment or sectors of a human or people's life. And in this case, this actually being implied by numbers of new players, new competitors that actually coming into this digitalizations, not only in logistic, but also in digital payment, e-commerce, and even right now, everything are digitalized. Everything can be purchased throughout online. So by looking at that implication, meaning that the numbers of internet users are getting higher and higher, not only using the internet, but also shopping throughout the internet. So I think it's pretty much aligned with what you just mentioned earlier.
No, that's great reconfirmation coming in from Bukalapak as well. And I think obviously we all lived through the pandemic times. We have seen, how our consumption and usage of digital mode has increased. And again, the entire ecosystem really coming together from a payments perspective, from a commerce perspective, from a fulfillment logistics perspective, I think really helped us in terms of, fuel into this particular growth. I'll want to share maybe a few additional insights, and I think which is sometimes slightly it's slightly different from some of the other, parts of the world. And especially when I look at Southeast Asia, especially with the mobile penetration, and in many cases it is like mobile first or mobile only approach is allowed to leapfrog. I mean, leapfrog as a term, has been coined over the last few years, but it's actually allowed, not to go through the incremental waves of innovation, but really go to the edge of the innovation, and really which is driving a phenomenal amount of rapid mobile commerce growth in the region. Consumers today, especially, rely on products, and they get a very wide set of assortment, which is normally either not available in stores, or sometimes it's very difficult to get like an endless aisle, kind of, assortment available in the physical stores which they want to purchase. And as a result of which, the whole mobile experience is something which is great for consumers. What is also, and I think, Park Albert just touched upon this, is the whole payments. The digital payments has also helped into this particular trend. We are expecting the whole digital payment value to touch more than $1.1 trillion. And especially with innovations on things like buy now, pay later, but also the expedited shipping. Today, when we look at shipping, we really believe that consumers are looking for same day delivery, next day delivery, and even the quick commerce trends are picking up very rapidly. But that is also, the convenience factor is also playing a role for consumers to drive more and more purchases and transactions through the digital channel. And the last but not least is the whole online to offline e-commerce is really coming together. So the entire omni-channel experience in terms of those two channels really converging together to be able to provide a great consumers searching online but picking up in stores, or they going to the stores and then the fulfillment happening at doorsteps or at home, or return in stores, or buy online and pick up in stores. I think a lot of those O2O trends is something that we are seeing. So it's not just about online replacing offline, but really online and offline really coming together, I think, is broadly what we are seeing over here. So with this backdrop, let me turn back and ask Park Albert, one of the first questions, and especially with Bukalapak being such a heavyweight in the entire online to offline as a channel, I would really want to, Park Albert, get your views and especially the trends that you are seeing in the entire Southeast Asia in O2O e-commerce space.
Okay, thank you, Malay, for this opportunity. Let me refresh a little bit about my previous statement related to the technological penetrations, because that actually, I believe, one of the most fundamental things that creates this kind of new environment as what we are living today. The internet penetration has been increasing to 75% based on Google survey in 2021 that actually create a validations of what we're actually happening right now. With that kind of huge numbers of internet penetrations, many kind of players are actually getting into have a super easy access to their potential consumers. Previously, maybe only middle-high people that actually know how to purchase online, but right now everyone has cell phones, right? Everyone has access to the internet. And that is one of the real answers of why the O2O is actually picking up the space. O2O, not only e-commerce, but also related to the transportations, tourism, medicine, and everything. But specifically related to the e-commerce itself, it's not only about the B2C. But right now, with the numerous people that have access to the internet, including the mom and pop stores owners, the O2O related to the eB2B has been also picking up some attractions since 2017, if I'm mistaken. In my earlier years in Bukalapak, it was kind of early stage of the O2O birth in Indonesia. Only few players back then, but right now, many kind of players are entering the space, meaning that options and many options towards the customers to have an aggregated platform to sell things online or to buy things online, not only the physical goods, but also virtual products and everything. And last but not least, I think how this can actually picking up more space is related to the culture in Southeast Asia itself. When you talk about mom and pop stores, it actually inherited towards many people's life, right? Way before the modern trade retailers has been there, mom and pop stores are actually becoming the frontier, the first frontier of the many kind of neighbors to buy things offline, right? And with the addition, empowering them with technology, mom and pop stores can actually broaden their categories to be sold, not only physical goods, but also virtual products. Furthermore, I think starting in 2020 or 2021, social commerce like group buying are also picking up some tractions as well. Because back again, going back to the root of having a cultural, a relationship with nearby neighbors or family, aggregate, becoming an agent to aggregate their demand, something that also become the new challenges, especially for the logistics people or also from the e-commerce itself. And also not only group buying, but omnichannel, like what you mentioned, that also implies why we can actually be coming in this kind of positions.
Well, I think this is great. Great to hear that. There's very important set of stakeholders, which are business owners,
Yeah.
small and medium-sized businesses, mom and pop stores. They are known as Kirana stores, for example, in India. Warkum, Sari Sari, in other parts of the world. They are actually at the front lines, really driving, and also adopting digital commerce to also expand their business. And Bukalapak Mitra playing a very important role in enabling those businesses, with your entire backend, logistics, fulfillment, infrastructure, procurement infrastructure that you really have. But let me ask one question over here, which could be, just to help simplify things for the audience as well. When you look at online to offline, how do you define it, and maybe are there use cases or any specific things that you want to share, which are basically driving, the increased adoption of e-commerce, right? So, I mean, what are the kind of things that these mom and pop stores are really doing, or the consumers are doing, where Bukalapak Mitra is really working with this hybrid channel or this offline channel as well, in terms of providing a great consumer experience? Would you be able to share any examples there?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Malay. Let me answer the question with a comparison before and after. Imagine one Kiranas or one mom and pop stores, right? They typically sell like a physical goods like staples, beverages, food and beverage, and so on and so forth. Before many kind of e-commerce players are entering this auto market, they need to purchase those kind of commodities throughout different suppliers, different distributors, different suppliers. Not only that, they need to go out from their stores. They need to close down a little bit for quite some hours to purchase the inventories. And then if they want to add up some virtual products, for example, like a cell phone or any kind of another virtual product, they need to connect with more complex suppliers that in their mindset is something that they are way beyond their reach. Because previously, many offline players are being approached by the cell phone company and everything to sell their virtual products. But right now, with this kind of particular O2O platform, they can actually get everything in one particular platform without bothering going out to their stores. And if they want to sell virtual products, they just need to install the application, and then that's it. They can actually sell it to the customers. So this actually streamlining their personal supply chain process, and then they can actually save so much time, so much energy, but then again, to acquire a wider range of assortment in a hassle-free process.
No, this is again wonderful to really understand that you are basically, solving both the sides of the supply chain problem for those businesses, right? I mean, what you're describing, how do you make their entire procurement process more efficient, wider assortment, easier fulfillment, a great experience in terms of they being able to look at doing everything, digitally or electronically, but also, the same set of businesses are enabled to be able to even sell, through the whole Bukalapak platform as well, right? So I think it's just enabling both sides of the supply chain, which is.
And if I may add up a little bit, like from the past couple of years, we also developed what we call as intermediate distribution center. So if someone asks like where you can actually send the goods from, typically we send the goods from the distribution center towards the end consumer, which is those mom and pop stores. But throughout the IDC model, we can actually connect like larger wholesaler towards smaller mom and pop stores. This actually expedite our scalability throughout Indonesia. And then the big wholesaler can actually get more tractions throughout small mom and pop stores. So again, nearby neighborhoods, this kind of culture actually connects the dots so that we can actually gain more tractions and scale. The scalability is getting bigger than ever.
So no, I think it's always, every single time I speak with Bukalapak Mitra, I mean, I get to hear about newer fulfillment models. So there's intermediate distribution centers, again drives the entire the whole faster pace of fulfillment, being closer to the consumers or the customers possible, and then that drives the whole agility in the supply chain.
Yeah.
Let me ask Park Albert, while this looks like almost like a fairy tale story, right? I mean, great consumers, great experience, and something that you're enabling all these businesses, but I'm sure it comes with its own share of, the complexity, the challenges associated with it, right? It's like almost the analogy which I give is like, the a duck which is sailing, on the top of the lake. I mean, it's like paddling, like really, which is not visible, right? paddling, at a frivolous space. So how do you keep up? And then what kind of challenges do you face when you have to manage, this rapidly growing end consumer expectations from consumers like you and me, but also this businesses as well, right? I mean, they are also becoming very digitally savvy. They are expecting more and more stuff, better convenience, etc. So walk us through, the kind of challenges that you are facing, and maybe broadly from an industry standpoint also you can talk about, what are the biggest supply chain challenges that the
Okay.
industry is witnessing.
All right. This is super interesting every single time I share it to some folks. But before we see the challenges, I think the main root cause is that this technological advancement actually creates another unprecedented situations where finally in years we deliver this scale of commodities to mom and pop store doorstep, right? And when we see the parcel characterizations, if you purchase things online, let's say you purchase books or you purchase any kind of things, the parcel is only like a very dense collies, maybe only one particular packages. Where when we talk about B2B, we send to mom and pop stores, one drop point can consist of more than 3 collies. Let's say like a big, several big boxes, plastics, and maybe eggs, crates of eggs and everything. So more diverse in terms of the collies itself. Now, throughout this kind of unprecedented challenges, we face several things such as the volatility of the orders. The volatility of orders comes from how prone people or our consumers towards promotions or any kind of activities that can cut the price to make their buying price lower. Again, this is also pretty much challenging in this space because our end consumer are not the end consumer. They are sellers, traders. So they want to have as low buying price as possible. So sometimes when we have some promotions or maybe the price is very good, the demand is skyrocketing. But if the price is not really good in the market, especially commodities like eggs, the demand is super, super slow or stagnant. So with that kind of basket size and volatility, super challenging for us to how to cope that with the logistical capabilities. In this case, is courier. What kind of courier fleet that we need to have, how many motorists, how many vans that can actually that can entertain the orders at the right time and the right moment. That's number one. The volatility is sometimes really tricky. The second one is for sure the traffic condition, especially when we talk about not only main cities but rural cities like Bekasi, those kind of cities also having a severe traffic jam in several key hours that actually jeopardize our SLA to consumers. And the third one is the demand of fast delivery. So this becomes a new trend. Nowadays, when we go to the consumers, one of the main competitive is that, hey, can you actually send these goods exactly tomorrow morning? because many competitors can do so. So this kind of competitive advantage of fast delivery also forming the new mindset of customer expectations. And many logisticians or supply chain folks supposedly have a headache to understand how to cope with that challenges, because we are in the intersection between having a great economy of scale compared with catering the quality that may be compromising the bottom line of the company. So I think those three challenges, especially the third one, related to the cost, that becomes the main challenge in order to cater the O2O customers' expectations.
No, so you talked about volatility, especially with promotions driving the spikes in demand, traffic. I think would really want to maybe talk about that. I know we can take our entire webinar hour on talking about that and how do you manage that particular challenge. But let me start with the third one, because I think that's really interesting one, because you did talk about the faster delivery, and us as end consumers were always expecting faster delivery. But the businesses, the SMB, small, medium-sized businesses, also expecting, the faster delivery, because obviously the consumerization of technology is also hitting those businesses, and they want, things to be delivered, at a much faster pace. But you also mentioned that you have to keep the cost under control.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you can do point-to-point deliveries, but it can really skyrocket the cost. So how, I mean, just walk us more through that. I mean, in terms of how do you balance, especially on the demand for faster delivery, and how do you optimize, still with your fleet that you talked about, right? The vans and the fleet that you have. How do you balance those kind of two opposite objectives, the cost on one side and the faster SLAs on the other side?
Okay. Well, I'll give you one example related to the fast delivery in O2O. Is not like particularly like instant delivery to the B2C, but fast delivery means, in terms of the mindset of our consumer, is that the earlier that you can possibly arrive at my stores, the better you are. So when we want to reach the economy of scale, we want to utilize as least fleet as possible, but every single fleet can actually reach as many drop points as possible. That actually leads us to have a longer time of delivery. Let's say it's not particularly before 12 p.m., but maybe there are some delivery above 12 p.m. so that we can reach economy of scale. But this is one of the challenges that we faced a few months ago, that, okay, how can we actually be more efficient in order to deliver all the goods before 12 p.m.? So what we did is actually we call as a hybrid delivery model. Hybrid delivery model here is combining between our dedicated delivery man compared with the daily worker delivery man, which we call it as a partnership model. So this partnership model is something that can be variable, depends on number of transactions that we need to deliver the next morning. But we still have a very safe numbers of dedicated delivery men that can actually serve the purpose. So using that kind of point, we have both fixed and variable costs. That's actually one of the strategy for many players, not only in the warung, but also in fresh groceries, or maybe the medications and everything, the O2O segment, to actually suppress the cost based on the variable and in terms of transaction they did deliver. That's one of the key strategies that I can share here.
Fantastic. Let's also talk about traffic a little bit. And I want to broaden the point on traffic. I mean, which is broadly, we all care about the sustainability from a perspective of, how cities can be more sustainable. Obviously, a lot of the e-commerce has also driven a lot of increase in traffic, as there are more and more deliveries which are happening. At the same time, we all care about the fuel costs sometimes going up, carbon emission, etc. So I just want to broaden that question a little bit. I mean, how do you solve for sustainability as a challenge? Considering we care for fuel efficiencies, we care for traffic. We also want to care for the riders, in terms of their well-being and their experience. So are there any specific challenges that you are facing and how you are going about solving, the whole sustainability angle over here?
Yeah, I think it's still unsolved and ongoing battle to combine between the economy of scale again and how we can actually sustain our logistical process, not to mention about the carbon footprint and everything. But the first thing and foremost is to understand the limitation in every single courier compared with the transactions rate that we are actually delivering in daily basis. So this also being helped by many kind of threshold that we can set up in this in Locus, especially how we can actually put like how the maximum tonnage per courier, so that we can actually give them a room of a room to rest throughout the day, so that there's no accident and everything that might happen in the future. That's number one. Number two is with the trend of electrical vehicles right now, we're actually testing out some pilot projects to use like electrical vehicle in the inner city area. So when we see this is our warehouse, and we create actually the map drawing in several radius. So in the first radius, we call it first radius, 0 to 10 kilometers. We deploy several electrical vehicles so that we can actually compare between the economy of scale having electrical vehicle and a conventional combustion engine based vehicle. So it's a super baby step. Still some list of electrical vehicle that we want to go through. But I think with the democratizations of electrical vehicle as well, many players should also consider to have it for especially like a shorter radius of delivery towards the customers.
Fantastic. No, I think the whole, both the aspects on the sustainability that you talked about could be a small step, but the step in absolutely in the right direction. I think the whole electrification is that one area that you talked about, the whole piece associated in terms of ensuring that there is enough for the couriers. There is a great kind of well-being which is being looked into from their rest and from their work planning perspective. Another great kind of best practice that you are sharing over here. Let me ask. I'll just go to the next slide. And you did talk about the basically obviously orchestrating this entire distribution with this very high expectation, and with the fleet that you have got, and balancing those objectives on multiple parameters, right? Sustainability being one, cost being another one, service levels being another one. Now obviously, as we have seen, we have grown almost 5 times in last 5 to 6 years, and we will expect to probably even double in the next 3 odd years. So what are some of the major advancements that you have specifically seen in the last mile, right, that you have witnessed from a technology perspective, and how is technology actually helping you solve some of these challenges or some of the best practices that you're trying to implement?
Well, I think 5-6 years ago, there are not many players are having requirement to have a very intense urban logistics. It's more into like city to city, or maybe like a inter island and everything, but more into a bulky delivery rather than like a retail grocery delivery like this. So this kind of situation pushed the boundaries for many players to innovate, right? One of the greatest innovations that I think becomes quite prominent right now is related to the ride hailing. The ride hailing trend, how can everybody can become the partners of this particular application providers. They can actually create more income streams toward their self and everything, becomes some sort of like a huge improvement, not only for delivering goods, but also for delivering many kind of services. So that's number one. And not that's from the rider's perspective, but from the consumer perspective, technology also bring us closer to the customer needs of the fleet requirements. This is something that we can see from the 4PLs. Previously, we end up in 3PLs, right? And then going forward to the 4PL, that right now not many companies working in the logistics sector without bothering having their own assets of the fleets. And without technology, I think we cannot be on the 4PL situations at this current moment. And this 4PL also strengthened us to have many kind of requirements to be fulfilled in a very short period of time. And the last but not least, from the operator's point of view, like myself and my team, is having like a technological advancement to support this kind of urban logistic, supporting the routing and having like a seamless process is something that also supporting our SLA to the consumers. And it's not actually required in the past 6 years, 6 years ago, because as I mentioned, it's more into bulky, like a shipping or trucking. But right now, who knows, like every single motorbikes needs to be routed as effective as possible. And with the kind of volatility of demand, without technology, I think that's quite would be challenging for the ground operation team.
Got it. Got it. No, this is you did talk about the whole urban logistics and especially the partners who are driving ride hailing becoming an important partners. And how do you ensure that there is an optimization which is happening from a routing perspective? So I think that obviously is a very important element that you have talked about. Um, Please, if you can also help us, maybe for the audience, help them understand, for example, how have you leveraged Locus technology to drive transformation in the last mile in particular, especially in terms of the efficiencies while meeting the customer service levels. If you can walk us, maybe
Right.
for the benefit of the audience here.
Well, for sure. When we call about the transport management system, is on the downstream of the process, right? The upstream coming from orders being order being captured, going to the warehouse management system, being routed. And throughout this very critical process, something that we felt benefit so much is actually how we can expedite the process. Previously, we do it in the super manual Excel-based routing with very less accuracy as well. Throughout 2 to 3 hours, and looking for from this particular applications and the features that Locus has, we can actually shorten it out to 20 to 30 minutes. And it actually answers everything on the overall process, because when we have very short amount of time to do the routing, we can do the pick and pack as soon as possible, so that in the next morning, when all the drivers can actually receive the orders that they need to deliver, we can actually deliver it on time with very strong monitoring in throughout the dashboard, that if there are any kind of cases or potential late SLA, that can be actually identified earlier than earlier. And the second one is, this is very important for the analytical purpose. Previously, without this kind of technological advancement, when we want to suggest like how many fleets that we want to serve, how effective the availability of those fleets are, we cannot actually put it on the fast way to attract the data and to crunch and everything, finally to become a reporting. But throughout the dashboard, we can actually see, okay, I think we can actually reduce not 10 delivery men, but going to 8 delivery men. I think we can have more daily worker delivery men in this particular dates, because when we see all the historical data, it's actually makes sense if we have less or more delivery in that particular data. So the analytical purpose can actually be served as well throughout the features that we provide.
Fantastic. No, I think this you touched upon multiple points. I think the whole data and analytics becoming very, very critical. Whether that data is about the availability of the fleet, availability of the of the riders, and how do you orchestrate this in a real-time manner, which basically allows and with an execution system, for you to be able to monitor this, especially in the last mile across so many different stakeholders, right? The B2B customers being one, the riders, the fleet owners, the dispatch managers, and doing it all on mobile, on cloud, with a lot of data. I think is clearly one area which Bukalapak Mitra is already leveraging Locus for. I'll just maybe touch upon 5 broad areas, and I'd like to get your thoughts here, right? And I think these are the broad themes that we picked up, saying, if we have to serve this next wave of another 200 plus million consumers who will get added over the next 3 years, what are the things that we need to enable the supply chain to be able to meet those expectations. And we kind of put out this 5 themes as something which is really necessary, for organizations to address, to be able to really meet this scale and expectation in the most efficient manner. The customer experience, and then you rightly mentioned that, even the businesses are now expecting, if they're not expecting like a quick commerce type delivery, but they're still expecting, much faster deliveries. And the experience associated with it becomes even more important, whether it's, the cash on delivery happening, or they being able to transact, with the newer promotions which are being put in place, etc. The analytics is another area that you just now touched upon, which is how do you uncover all the inefficiencies, right? With advanced analytics,
Right.
how are you able to predict, potentially miss routes, potential breaches to the SLAs, best performing riders, best performing maybe, the product categories, etc. The last mile again, especially the urban logistics, I think we partly touched upon that part. That's another thing that we talked about, which is how are you able to, deliver more efficient, in a more efficient manner than your previous delivery itself, right? So how do you become better with data? How do you become better with the algorithm which is allowing you to scale? The workforce empowerment, I think very important piece of the stakeholder. We are seeing huge attrition, especially with the riders, and the number of opportunities available to them is also increasing. So how do you ensure that their well-being is taken care of? How do you ensure that you are doing it in a way which is also very sustainable, for that workforce? And last but not the least is the whole sustainability piece, which is how are we doing this in the most optimal manner, where we are contributing to the to the reduction in carbon emission. So those are the 5 broad themes I put out. Would like to get your views, if you want to rank them in terms of priority, or you want to share kind of maybe Bukalapak Mitra's priorities, or things that you are doing in any of these areas, things which probably we didn't touch upon earlier, or things that you want to elaborate, Mark Albert.
All right. I think it depends on at what level of maturity the organization is, right? If I may recall back in 2018 experience, I think the number one priority is having the last mile excellence, especially something that we haven't been faced earlier with this amount of transactions and with this amount of calls that we need to deliver on time. The better last mile excellence that I can actually support number one, which is the customer's experience, and not to mention also about the workforce empowerment, because previously the turnover in my transport admin is super high, because sometimes when you put this number of transactions, we need to ensure that this admin knows the area. So like a human understanding about the area, and then the address and everything, that creates better last mile excellence. But when you are actually have been quite excellence in the last mile delivery, because of many kind of iterations of a process, the sustainability becomes one of the highest priority. Because as I mentioned earlier, that it's not about the sustainability in terms of the environment, but also the sustainability of the business itself. Again, when we talk about logistics, we are the cost center. Cost center become one of the burden for the bottom line of the business, right? If we are not actually managing that quite well. So how we can actually have sustainable business process with more effective and efficient costs, that's something that we need to also become the very first priority throughout this moment.
Wonderful. No, I think the whole last mile experience, which also dives into the experience for the workforce as well, where you are enabling them with the technology so that they don't get overburdened, but it's basically makes their lives easier. I think a great theme. And then the cost, obviously, and the efficiency becomes a perennial thing to keep pushing the boundary on. And I think as an organization, we believe that we are contributing in a small way to that effort. But clearly with leaders such as yourself, I mean, you are taking it to the next level in terms of the business processes and the technology adoption that you're driving. So with this, I think we are coming to an end. I mean, for this particular webinar, I want to open up for a few questions. I have already one question, which is here from Vineet, who is asking this question, especially more from a trend perspective, that with the whole COVID pandemic in some sense already behind us, at least in Southeast Asia, are people actually getting back to buying the grocery or FMCG items from the stores? more than buying it from the e-commerce platform? What is the trend that you are seeing in Southeast Asia or specifically in Indonesia? If you can share your views there.
Well, this is very tricky questions because in a way, many kind of e-commerce players can actually secure their market because when we talk about the pool of customers, we are actually going toward the same pool of customers with the fellow offline players, right? Even some those of offline players right now are becoming online with their own particular platform. So right now, it's not about uh, whichever that there are the people are more purchasing from online or offline, but how to get a very balanced situations. Maybe we cannot win in this particular categories like staples. Most of the people are still inhabited with their culture of having a weekly groceries or monthly groceries. That is something that we cannot actually super depends on. But in several categories like clothes, like electronics, and even some of like a groceries, which right now we call it like a quick commerce, something that online players can win on. So right now we are trying to find the equilibrium point of which categories that we can depend on, which people can already have this kind of habit to purchase it online. And if some categories people are still tend to buy offline, and that's okay, even though we can support it a little bit of market portions out of it. So it's not fully going offline right now to be precise to answer the questions, but right now we can see the pattern, which categories that people are more reluctant to buy online, which one they want willingly to buy online.
Thank you so much, Park Albert, with that answer. Um, any final summary points from your side, Park Albert, in things that we covered today? We obviously broadly touched upon the opportunity, supply chain being very critical to meeting that opportunity, on all the innovation and trends that we need to, contribute to make the supply chain more efficient, more agile. Would like to hear any other concluding thoughts from your side.
Well, so many things that I would like to be concluded, but I think it's a very challenging for us as a fellow logisticians, as fellow operation people that needs to be survive in this very quite tight economy. How can we actually survive with maintaining a very efficient process, not to neglecting the quality service to the customers? But one thing for sure is that I think throughout the data, we can actually answer many kind of things. We can actually provide proposals to the management. So one thing for sure is that we need to ensure that we have a quick access to the data so that we can have more tactical proposals to the management in order to be survive in this kind of economy, especially from the operation standpoint. I think that's something that relevant towards this current situation, Malay.
Wonderful, Park Albert. Thank you so much for this, wonderful.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me as well.
Yeah, and I know we covered some very wide range of topics, of course. But so I mean, heartwarming to hear about how Bukalapak Mitra is really enabling all these businesses, focused on ensuring that the whole workforce empowerment and the sustainability goals are also being optimized as you leverage the technology to drive the cost efficiency and the service level improvements. I'm hoping our audience also got some nice takeaways and insights from this particular forum. We'll stay in touch with you, and as we anyways do. But once again, thank you for participating in the
likewise
webinar. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Malay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye bye.